Well, guys, looks like they're fighting all over Momo. I thought they would be friends, and I think that's still gonna happen at the end of the day. But right now, they're kind of unintentionally fighting because they were just playing soccer, but then it turned into something else. So, I mean, this chapter is pretty straightforward, guys. Dandadan, chapter 33. Let's just give a little quick overview and really get into the meat of this chapter. But basically, they're hanging out in Gigi's house. Momo begins the chapter just looking around, seeing what's up in the house, and there's nothing there. And she kind of concludes that this was kind of similar to when Okaroon and Momo were trying to find Turbo Granny, right? She was so weak that she couldn't sense her or find her. And this is the same situation. So whatever spirit, ghosts, and from what we understand, it's the aliens again, right? They're hiding. They're hiding from Momo, and the aliens especially know Momo because they run into her and Okaroon so many times. But yeah, so that's that, and then she basically says, I'm going to go to the hot springs. So she basically gets out of there. And the reason being for this is we find out later in the chapter that she wants Okaroon to kind of, talk with Gigi. She doesn't want to get in the way of her or him and Gigi talking, because the chapter before, when they were on the way, they were kind of talking about similar things and interests, and Momo noticed that. So she's trying to not get in the way of Okaroon making his first male friend, which she's right. And I mentioned that last chapter. This is like his first male friend. So she leaves, and then it's just the two of them. And Gigi kind of looks at him, and he's like, "You want to play soccer?" And they start playing soccer, and he's kind of teaching Okaroon the basics of soccer. And he's like, "Hey, you don't have to apologize all the time. It's okay if you make a mistake." And this is where it gets kind of funny, right? So Gigi just brings it up because he's been thinking it. He's like, "Hey, Okaroon, do you have a thing for Momo?" And he kind of looks slightly not necessarily flustered, but he's looking a little shy, right? And then he says, "She's cute, right?" And then Okaroon says, "Well, Miss Ayase is the first friend I've ever had, so I respect her, and she's very important to me." So he basically comes at it like, "Well, I mean, she's my good friend. I respect her. I'm really close to her." So he's basically saying that he doesn't like her like that when he actually does, because Gigi says, "Well, I, for one, totally love her face and her personality." And then Okaroon, because these past couple chapters, has been building up the courage because he does not want to lose to this guy, because he's got these feelings for Momo for the past like 5 chapters, right? He's like, "Well, so do I." And then he said, "You just said you respected her." "Yeah, I do, and plus all the stuff you just said." And it's funny because they keep going back and forth, adding on one to another, right? And then you see in the next couple panels, they go from standing across from each other to literally being like side by side trying to play soccer like in each other's faces, right? And then they're going back and forth. He's like, "I love her eyes, there I win." And then he's like, "Well, I plus that, and I love her mouth, there I win." And they just keep trying to one up each other, right? And as they continue to one up each other, Gigi's like, "Well, I'm her lifelong friend, there I win." And then Okaroon thought of the chapter where they accidentally kissed, and he's like, "When?" And basically he didn't want to say what happened because he was too embarrassed to say it, but he was like, "Well, I mean, technically I won because of what I'm thinking of right now," but he didn't want to tell Gigi because he was embarrassed, right? And then we get Momo talking about what I mentioned earlier, is that she wanted to get away from them while they spend some time together for Okaroon's sake, right? But then we see the creepy aliens watching in the shed. So after that, they kind of get into a fight. Oh man! So they get into a fight, and then they're just kind of going back and forth again. And then Gigi's trying to get Okaroon to admit he's lost. And then they notice something, or Okaroon notices something by the house, right? And I'm trying to see, there's like this extra little area by the house that looks kind of off, and I want to see if I saw this. Okay, So this is in the first panel at the beginning of the chapter. But there's like this extra area, and when they went in the house, that's not a room. And I'm surprised Gigi didn't notice it, because he should have said something off bat, like, hey, is that like a new area in my own home? But basically they go inside the house, the wall's kind of hollow, there's no door leading to that area. So basically Gigi grabs a hammer and opens up a little hole. And then it's this creepy kind of looking room, and people in the comments were saying it looked like the room Yuji was in the first episode of JJK, which I kind of agree with. It's kind of funny. But yeah, this is the hideout. Now, I don't know what's going on. I think this may be, if I had to predict for next chapter, that this is maybe some type of weird summoning or something, and that's the thing that Gigi saw in person and also in his dreams. And the aliens are behind this again. But yeah, I mean, we'll just have to find out. But definitely something very creepy and spiritual going on as usual, right? And yeah, man, that's really about it for the chapter. I mean, Okarun, again, I think what's going to happen is they're going to keep fighting over Momo. After this little mini arc of them fighting or working together, I predict that they're going to be cool. But I don't know if Gigi's going to kind of give up on Momo. But the thing is, Momo already likes Okarun anyway. So I think he might eventually bow out. But I think, like I've been saying, I think eventually they're going to become friends, and Okarun will like make a move on Momo, or at least admit that he likes her. So yeah, man, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Great chapter.